Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm Nicole Holland and super excited to have Erin with me today. We're going to be talking about how to fix your mind, and she's going to share her process for the Mind Fix Anxiety Melting process today. So, Erin, before we jump into that, can you give us a little bit of an overview of what this is, who it's for? And why, like, who's going to just want to take some serious notes?
Sure. So I actually have two processes, and they're just basically different variations on the same theme. And I found that one works well for some people and one works well for others. And what I've found is that as entrepreneurs, as we go through our days, we run into snafus and roadblocks and frustrations and little hiccups and things that just aren't supposed to happen. And we get triggered. We feel frustration, we feel anger, we feel anxiety, we feel sad. But we run businesses and we have to keep going. Like, we can't just, hit 10 a.m., feel frustrated or angry, and then just go, you know what, I'm just going to call it a day again. I'm done. I can't deal with this. I'm too angry. And so these little tools are really great tricks to keep in your back pocket for when you get triggered, when you find yourself maybe a little overrun with an emotion and you need to get back to calm. And for some people, they can do that with meditation. Other people struggle with meditation, or want something even faster. So these two tricks are just really effective, powerful ways to bring yourself back to a kind of more balanced, calm state and go, okay, I'm reset. I'm going to go on with my day, because we just can't be pulled off course like that.
Sweet. All right. So what should we know before we jump into it? Anything, or do we just want to jump right in?
The only thing I'd like to share about these two techniques is that, um, you know, uh, I have a business called the Mind Fix Group, and people hear Mind Fix, and I don't want to give any false hope that these tools are going to suddenly fix your mind or fix something that's broken. They really are beautiful band-aids. They help in the moment, they help temporarily, they're quick fixes, they're great tools, but they don't actually address the root problem. So if every time you have a difficult conversation with a client and you hang up the phone and you're feeling riled up or you're feeling anxious and fearful, and that's a pattern of yours, yes, these tools can help bring you back, but they're not going to fix the pattern. It's going to happen again next time. So what I do in my work is actually pull out the root so that the pattern doesn't continue. These are band-aids people can use when they're experiencing and finding themselves in the pattern.
Got it. So this is like, um, that I'm assuming then, and I could be wrong, so correct me if I am. I'm assuming that this is something folks can use until they get to the root. Um,
Yes,
okay.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And you do actually get to the root in your business, and so that's an option if they want to get to the root beyond just the band-aids to help them stabilize and get back to being able to do things in a productive and healthy way when they're having a shit day.
Totally. 100%.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So which one would you like to begin with?
The 90-second and it's gone technique. This is
All right. Well, the floor is yours. 90 seconds and it's gone. I'm super excited to hear about this.
this is really unbelievably elegant and simple, so much so that I've had clients teach their very young children this technique and start to use it with their kids and see incredible results. So what happens, let's say you find yourself kind of caught up and you're feeling anger. You get an email from a client, it's got some bad news, they want to leave you, something like that. They want to cancel the account, they want to leave a contract, and you're feeling yourself really deeply upset. So there's really only two steps to this technique. The first is you have to catch yourself in whatever state you're feeling and name the emotion that you're feeling that you want to dissolve. So in this instance, we'd say, okay, feeling fucking angry. I'm pissed. That's what's going on. That's what I want to dissolve. That's step number one. Really easy. Be aware of it and name it. Okay. Now, here's what's interesting is these emotions that we're experiencing, they are chemical reactions. When we experience emotion, there's a release of neurochemicals that happens in our brain and they flood into our system. But what's interesting is if we don't feed the story, the chemicals will stop and the emotion will literally die, dry, dissolve, and go away. So the only thing that keeps the neurochemicals pumping out, that is what is actually causing us to feel the emotion, is by continuing the story that we're telling. So whenever we have an emotion, it's coming with a story that's coming along with it. There are thoughts. So there's the thoughts of, they've wronged me, they shouldn't do that, it's not okay, that always happens to me. We're telling ourselves a story there. If we can go for 90 seconds without feeding that story, and it's almost like a little fire, and we give no oxygen to that fire, the chemicals will stop getting pumped out. And we literally will not experience that emotion that feels like it's practically taking over our lives and stopping our day and bringing everything to a complete standstill. So people will find different ways to go for 90 seconds, literally 1.5 minutes, without feeding the story. And some people will go, you know what, I'm going to sit in this chair and I'm going to pull up a picture of a tree, I'm going to look at it, and I'm just going to breathe. And they won't allow themselves to tell the story, or they will go and they'll go play with their child, or they will do something, and it has to happen. Like, people will go for 45 seconds, it's not enough. You need a full 90 seconds for most people, and the emotion will literally go away completely. That's it. It is that powerful. And when you understand that the chemical part of the equation, you can start using that whenever you'd like.
Cool. So would it make sense then if it's 90 seconds that you can go longer than 90 seconds? Or is there something about 90 seconds specifically that then you want to get back into what you were doing before?
You shouldn't need longer than 90 seconds because that's basically not the half-life, but that's how long the chemicals will keep being released. And as you keep telling the story, you need 90 seconds of no story in order for your brain to go, oh, you know what? I'm not going to release these chemicals anymore. Some people need a little bit less. So once it's done and it's gone and the chemicals have stopped, you're back to neutral. You don't need to do anything else. You can go back to work.
Awesome. So what about when these stories start creeping up again later in the day?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is common for everybody, but I know for myself, sometimes I'll get fired up about something, I'll get twisted, and then I actually naturally do what you're talking about. So I release it and stop the story. But then later in the day, something will bring me back to it and it'll fire me up again. And, or there's things where it'll keep coming up, or I'll get a follow-up email from somebody after it's like, okay, this is over and done and resolved. And then it's like, so then, it's just keeping going through that. Um, I don't think I'm the only one. So what is the strategy for when that happens? And if people practice this, will that relapse, if you will, continue in the same strength, in the same way that it tends to at this point?
Good questions. Okay, so there's multiple parts there. So in terms of what the options are, you can keep repeating this tool if it works for you because it is so simple and because it is so easy and because it is so fast. Some people will go, oh, I don't want to have to keep using it. But when you compare it to getting to people who I know or who might come to work with me who get derailed for days because they don't have a tool like this, 90 seconds really isn't so bad to have to keep using it over and over. An alternative, if this isn't feel like quite strong enough, is you can use the second tool, which I'll explain in a second. But at the end of the day, what you're talking about really comes back to you're experiencing a pattern that's getting triggered because of a root problem, and that root is still there. So that pattern is still going to keep happening until the root goes away. So your options really are to address the root and to find out identify and eliminate the reason why you get so triggered, the reason why you get so upset, the reason why you have the anxiety or the fear every time when somebody in the next room might experience the same event and not have that same fear, right? So your options are to get rid of the root or to keep applying the best Band-Aid or tool that you know that will get rid of it the quickest. So even though these tools are Band-Aids and they seem like a hassle and you have to keep dealing with it, it is better than the people who don't have them and who get derailed. It's not as good as going in and getting rid of the cause of it. So you kind of have three options to choose from. Get rid of the root, keep applying it, try a different tool, or get derailed for hours or days.
Fantastic. All right.
So,
So do you want to go into the other one?
yeah. So the other one I have found some people struggle to they struggle to be able to go 60 seconds or 90 seconds without telling themselves the story or without the story creeping back in. They'll be looking out the window or they'll be taking some breaths and it'll just be like, but that person has done that to me 10 times, or I know I'm so unlucky. This always happens to me. And it just seeps back in. And they'll go and try and talk with someone else, but it's still in the back of their head going, so it's still pumping out the chemicals, so they still feel it. So for people who struggle to use the first tool and who need a way to really get their mind to not allow it to keep telling the story, this tool is for them. It's actually used oftentimes for people who are having like even severe anxiety and panic attacks. It can be really useful even for people who are in the throes of serious emotion. And it's really basic and really kind of boring because all it does is it harnesses your attention and points it onto something else so you cannot tell a story. But it does it in a very focused way instead of being like meditation where people often get distracted and they get pulled away from their breath. So what you do is you sit in your chair and you choose an object in the room. It does not matter what it is. And you can do this with someone else there. Some people feel more safe or it's easier for them if there's someone there with them. You can do it by yourself. You choose an object in the room, and what you do, put the object in front of you or you look at it, and you rate your emotion. You know, that emotion that you named before. You come up with like, okay, it's at a 9. It's at a 9. This time you rate it so you know where it's at. And what you do for a minute, for 60 seconds, you pull up a timer, is you sit and you describe whatever object you've picked. I am looking at a cylinder. It is white. There's the words legendary taste are across in really metallic shine. There's bubbles. There's a coconut. And you have to describe it as if you're trying to get someone else to see it. And you talk about colors and shape and location and size and all the pieces. And when your ding, 60 seconds goes up, you come back and you rate your feeling. Okay, it's still pissed. It's probably a 7.5. And what you do is you then pick up another object. Okay, this is a rectangle and it's got the letters PNY in light gray and it's a high grade, and you just do that. Your brain cannot focus visually and verbally on something like this and tell a story in the background. So this will pull you away for 60 seconds, and what you'll find is it's literally impossible to tell a story. So you come back, you go 60 seconds, you rate it, and what you'll notice is your emotion that otherwise could have pulled you away starts to decrease. Some people, depending on how intense their emotions are, might need to do it 6 or 7 times. Some people once or twice. Just depends on the intensity of the experience and the strength of the story that you were telling yourself. But this is a really beautiful way, uh, boring but beautiful, elegant way to literally stop the story from being told in your head, which will stop the chemicals, which will allow you to reset and come back to a place where you're like, I'm at a 1 or a 2. I can go on with my day. And that's it.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of a de-escalation technique I used to use with kids when I worked in crisis support and intervention. And that was obviously facilitated, but that's what I would do is just like, it's almost like a snap. Okay, here, I need your attention. Okay, for right now, this thing, tell me about it. And they're like, why the fuck? And it's like, no, no, no. I just, I need your attention and let's go here. And it's amazing. I mean, obviously this is a little bit different and this is a self-regulating tool. But as you're talking about that, it just brought me right back there. And for our folks that are listening on the podcast, you might want to pop on over to the show notes page at thenicolehollandshow.com, because during this demonstration, Erin was actually, using some objects. And so if it would, I think it's valuable to see this, because we can all like hear it and get an idea. But I think there was a lot of power and intention while you were actually doing it as a demonstration. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's simple. It can be done by yourself. It can be done with someone else. It can be done with children. That's why I like it, and that's why it's fun to share. Is it's so not time consuming. It's elegant. It's easy. There's 2 steps. We can all do this.
Yes, for sure. So how did you discover these two processes? I mean, obviously, you are an expert in this, but can you talk a little bit about how you came to realize that these are two processes that people can use on their own when they haven't gotten rid of the root cause of a trigger or a story?
So these were tools that were taught to me or that I read about, because my journey actually started like into this world with a lot of chronic pain. And what ended up happening in the way that I put my business together is I was like a kid going to an ice cream shop and taking like a taste of every single little every bucket, every flavor. I really was like the person that got almost no results from anything, and I saw hundreds of therapists and practitioners and read hundreds of books, and just tried everything. And what I would do is I kept getting told, like, you're a really difficult case, you're really challenging, this doesn't happen with other people. But along the way, I'd find these little bits of gold where I'd go, you know what, this doesn't work for me, but I have a hunch this works for most people. And I just started tracking everything in, like, I think my Evernote, and keeping a small folder of things where I go, this feels like it's an important part of a puzzle, but by itself, it doesn't do a lot. So I just became this collector as I started to work with different people and go, this didn't work for me, but they shared an interesting insight, and I'd save it. And then I'd read a book going, it didn't really help or talk to me, but it had this one little tool in it. So I think like the first tool that we talked about, the 90 seconds and it's gone, it wasn't even shared as a tool. Somebody was explaining like the neuroscience behind it, and I said that could be put into a simple 2-step tool if I explain it in a certain way, and people could use this instead of just someone talking about the science. This could be used, right? So I popped it into Evernote and made a note to share this with people someday. And the second tool I think I used when I was I was working with a practitioner one night on the phone, and I think I had been put on some type of medication that I was having a really horrific reaction to that was not working with my system, and I was having a really severe anxiety. And at one point he's like, we're just going to stop. I'm going to do something with you. And I remembered how I was sitting there going, yeah, there's nothing you're going to be able to help me with. And he had me, describing the clock on the wall and the chair. And I was like, this is the most boring thing ever. And within 5 minutes, it had completely changed my state. And we were able to move on and have a really great, productive conversation. So I never forgot that. And I, again, kind of jotted that down as this is something that, I've gone all these decades of my life living, and no one ever, this would have been so helpful. And I need to share this with more people.
That's awesome. Can we dig into your personal story a little bit? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So before you were doing this, what you're doing today, you were a business owner. You were a successful business owner as you were exploring all these different modalities and therapies and medicines and all of the things because you were having your own struggles. So, can we go back to that and just first off, can you share with our listeners what your business was and where you were at in your business when the problems started coming your way?
Yes. So I ran a web agency for 16 years. And um, about 4 years ago now, um, I had just had this feeling for a couple years that there was something more that I was supposed to be doing. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. The industry was becoming commoditized. There was a glut of competition. I wasn't having fun anymore. And there was a sense of I need to be doing something else, but that's all I ever knew. I opened up shop straight out of grad school and didn't know what else I could ever possibly do. And one day, I was in the middle. I'd had a series of surgeries, some botched surgeries. I had been in a near death car accident, and I was coming back from all of these kind of just difficult life challenges. And 6 months later, I was getting back into peak health. I was training for a mountain bike competition, and I had this twinge in my ankle, so like a little zit, electric. It didn't hurt. It was just an odd, like I looked down at my ankle. And within 1 week from that zit, I suddenly was somebody who was walking around in chronic pain, like with pain that nobody could describe, with pain that didn't show up on x-rays or MRIs, that wasn't correlated to any disease or dysfunction. Nobody could figure anything out. So I went on this wild goose chase. As my business was still running in the background and I had my team running it, but I focused all of my energy on how am I going to get better. And I got sent from one doctor to the next. At one point, I was sitting in a brain surgeon's office looking around at people who were like paralyzed and couldn't speak and were going in for brain surgery, and I'm sitting there like breaking down going, what's wrong with me? Why nobody knows what's going on? Why am I here? And got pushed around. Nobody could tell me anything. So as these weeks and then months upon months after, and then became year plus, it just continued. My emotional health started to suffer because I started to go, I'm never going to get better. Nobody knows what's wrong with me. There's something horrific going on. I'm powerless, right? Like I can't figure this out. I'm spending all of my time and all of my money and all of my energy and all of my effort, and nothing is working. It was the first time in my life where I couldn't get anything to work. So I started to look into taking care of my mental state as well, which was really suffering. And so as I was going to all of these doctors and experiencing different modalities, I then also started to go see therapists and practitioners and people who worked with the mind, because I was like, if I can't handle the stress. I became completely suicidal. I wasn't enjoying my business. I didn't feel good in my body. I'd wake up every morning going, great, another day of doctors. And then I'm going to go to sleep tonight in pain and not loving my life. And I have nothing to look forward to tomorrow. So it was during that second part of the experience where I started learning more about how the mind worked and working with different practitioners. I'd been to, therapy my entire life, and it had never really done much for me. So I started testing out different modalities. Some of them were way woo-woo and out there, and I was just like, I'll try it, and did nothing for me. And I started to stumble upon some different modalities that, oh my God, that had an impact on me. That is different. Something's changing. This is shifting. And I started to piece these parts together and came up with what I feel is truly like this magic formula that hits a lot of what we all struggle with on different levels in a way that so many people out there are working, but they're only hitting like one part of it, which is why that's so hit or miss. And that's why, because I feel like what I came up with hits these challenges on multiple levels at the same time. That's why we're able to have a 95% plus success rate, and why we're so consistent and our clients are experiencing complete transformations and changes in their lives in a matter of weeks, instead of I've going to therapy for decades.
Thank you for sharing that so vulnerably and openly. That's so I just want to, number one, applaud you for what you're doing for your clients. And I know a number of people who've worked with you who sing your praises. And so it's, I'm sure, rewarding to have those experiences. And I also want to thank you for not giving up and not just giving in. Um, it definitely takes a special person to get through those tough times. And with that, to shift over to, once you did start kind of getting it together for yourself, finding a way to impact other people who are going through different levels of similar experiences that you felt so stuck in, because everybody's stuff is their own. Everybody goes through their own experience of suffering, and nobody can judge somebody else's. Everybody's life is unique. But the one thing that is universal is that we all do struggle. And most of the time, people will not admit it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to acknowledge it, especially when they are a successful business owner, when they are running a company. And the fear and shame in hiding what their struggles are. I mean, there's a balance there, right? There's a piece of it where it's like you still have to hold your shit together when you're running a company. You have employees depending on you, you have your image to concern yourself with, there's all of the things, you have your clients. And at the same time, to balance out how you can not only go through the process yourself, but how you can invite others to come along with you. And I am not a big follower of pop culture, but I know that there have been so many um, high attention, I forget the actual word or phrase, high profile suicides in the last while. And I think it's becoming more prevalent because people aren't willing to share where they're at because of their image, because of their responsibilities, etc. And so I guess this is just my little, pulpit opportunity to speak to my audience and say, like, you're not alone. Like, every single person on earth, no matter what their socioeconomic situation is, no matter their ethnicity, no matter their job, their business, whatever, we all struggle. And there is no shame in seeking support. Um, and sometimes that even comes from your own your own team, your own clients. Obviously, there's a balance there, and that is something as entrepreneurs and business owners that we have to be more mindful of. But but yeah, so I just really, really appreciate very deeply, Erin, how vulnerably you did share your experience. I could be wrong, but I got the sense just in the conversation that's not something that you often do or in the way that you did. And I just want to acknowledge you for that. And I'm sure that your sharing is and has impacted other people who needed that. So thank you.
Very welcome. My pleasure.
So with that, um, you now are in a space you've come through and you have the supports, and now you're supporting others to get that root, get it out of there. Um, so before we wrap up, I'd love for you to share with my audience how they can continue this conversation with you if they feel drawn, if they want more than just the band-aid approaches and they want to explore um, the work that you do, especially if they've been kind of where you're at. And I can relate, right? Before I started getting treatment for lupus, I had a good couple of years there where biopsies and all of the things, and I wasn't able to walk and I couldn't breathe, and I mean life sucked. And that questioning of, is this just in my head? Like, am I like, it's not in my head because I'm having these physical manifestations, but I know that everything starts in your head. So am I creating this? And how am I? And it's like, it sucks. So if people want to explore, how you might be able to help them and the work that you do overall, what's their best next step?
Best next step would be to take a look at, honestly, just take a look at my website. It's mindfixgroup.com. And I would suggest for people who are interested in learning why we get stuck and why more information in trying to change our actions and our habits doesn't work. We give it all this effort and we try to change who we are and we try to break old patterns and habits, and it just doesn't seem to work. I have a training there. It's 1 hour. It's a video. It's still free. Anybody can grab it. You just click the free training button there if you'd like. Um, I'd also invite people to take a look and scroll down the results page, because I like to invite people to see what's possible. Because when people see that page, for many people, it's the first time that they see that things we're often taught in our society are that's just who you are and that's how things are and that's how they're going to be and you can't change that. It's the first time that people see that a lot of these things that we're told are permanent or they're givens of being an entrepreneur or a high achiever. It's the first time that they see they aren't givens, and that it is possible to not only get rid of these things that hold us back and that act like these big ball and chains in our entrepreneurial lives, but that it can be done fast and easily without hassle and without stress. And I would love for more people to have seeds planted in their head that it's a possibility, because for so many people it's just a given that it's something they'll never work on and they have to deal with.
So good. Awesome. So in addition to that, any final words? Actually, the website again was mindfixgroup.com. Yeah. all
Yes.
all together. Perfect. And is that group with a E at the end, or is it just, do you want to spell it
Is
out?
that a Canadian thing? Do you guys spell group
Maybe,
with an E?
maybe. I think, I think there's two different uses where we would spell it without an E or with an E, and
Group with no E.
OUP.
GROUP.com.
Okay, so mindfixgroup.com for those listening.
Perfect.
And of course, I'm going to have all of this over at the show notes page at the NicoleHollandShow.com. So, yeah, make sure you pop over there. Erin, final words of wisdom you'd like to leave us with before we say goodbye?
Nope, I would just like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for everybody for listening today. Thank you so much.